Welcome back to Buckets, WNBA edition. I am your host, Jim Turvey. We are excited to be joined by Dani Bar-Lavi, the they with the play, my bet she wins sibling. Dani, welcome into Buckets. It is long overdue. How's it going? So glad to have you on.
I'm doing good. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, no, I've been dying to come on, dying to do an action podcast in general. This is my very first time.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I've been like in the outer orbit of like the broader action network, the literal network of people. And now here I am in your feed on Buckets.
Absolutely love it. We've got a little bit of a lighter slate for Friday. So let's do a little bit of background, a little bit of chatter before we get into it. Over at Bet You Wins, you've been doing great. You and Calvin over there, obviously killing it with the plays. What have you been seeing betting wise? What have you been enjoying watching? Maybe even that's what your biggest takeaway is so far. What have kind of been your thoughts on the season now that we're, 3 weeks into it about? So what are your thoughts on the W so far?
Someone was asking me, like, obviously being like a professional bettor, sports bettor, handicapper, whatever, like, not a lot of people know what the day-to-day of that actually looks like. So I was chatting about that with like some people not in the whole universe of this the other day. And I think what I've most enjoyed has also been in some ways the worst thing from a gambling perspective about this season, which is just how different the WNBA is this year. And that's been a lot of the work, is just watching film, looking at stats, trying to like catch like the little nuggets of coach wisdom that we get here and there from press conferences that give some insight into what they're about and what they're trying to do. I've really been enjoying that. It's been tough. Like, I think 8 out of 13, 9 out of 13 of the teams are starting out with a new coach. A lot of them have a lot of roster turnover. Like, we have one literal expansion team, but Phoenix and Connecticut also like kind of have this expansion team feel with how different their roster is. So yeah, no, that's been troubling. It's been difficult, but that's kind of, the challenges are what we're here for. I mean, the puzzle of it is what we're here for. Obviously, it's nice to cash a bet. We prefer to win, but when we lose, if we lose in a way that we can learn from it, that feels good. And I do feel like, to be honest, that there's been a fair bit of that this season so far. But I think we're all learning good things.
Yeah, 100%. I agree that it has been genuinely a much tougher year to beat in the past. It felt like we were kind of in the kitchen by ourselves. It was, me, you, and Calvin hanging out, Dano, some other folks, Danielle, like the whole crew, we're hanging out there and we're having a good time. And then suddenly, like, 30,000 other people with money to spend showed up to the party, and it has made betting the W tougher. But I think that is something you and I both would take that trade 100 times out of 100, because it's a really fun puzzle to solve. It gets you, it's a little bit more challenging. If anything, that's a fun puzzle. And B, it means there's more eyeballs on the league. It means there's more attention. It means there's more money and potential revenue for them if they, are able to monetize, betting interest in the sport. So overall, really great to see. So with all that in mind, let's go to Friday's slate. We just have 2 games. The games are Atlanta at Connecticut. Connecticut is a +9 underdog, total of 157 there. And then we have the Los Angeles Sparks at Dallas. Dallas is a 2-point underdog. So we have 2 home dogs on Friday. Total there is 170.5. So Dane, we'll do the full logic, and we overlap on a fair amount of this, but why don't you just list out your best bets, and then we'll circle back for the full rundown.
Absolutely, yeah. So first of all, with the overlap, Atlanta -9 and alts. And then also in that same game, kind of in theme with that, Alicia Gray over 16.5 points. And then one I hadn't written down, but just to touch on the other game a little bit, I do like that over 170.5 in LA at Dallas.
Nice. I love that. I was looking at that game to see if there was something I could find. Nothing really popped to me. I leaned towards LA. They opened as a plus money at a +90 number. I love that. I was trying to hope it would stick until the pod. It didn't stick until the pod. They're now a 2-point favorite. I still lean that direction, and we can kind of touch on that over. And I think maybe it's kind of similar of why I'm interested as well. But my best bet, is Atlanta -9 and alts, very much overlapping with you there. And then my player prop, I'm going to the other, talented wing slash guard for the Dream, Ryan Howard, 4+ threes. So, Danny, I'll defer to you to talk through kind of spread and alts on Atlanta, but we're in alignment on this. So I'm guessing we'll we have long talked through bets together. So I'm guessing our logic is quite similar. But why don't you start with your logic, and I'll build off of anything that I think I can add when you're done.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, the very basic intro to betting thing that these two teams played recently. In that game, Atlanta beat Connecticut by, I believe, 20 plus points. I believe it was 24 points. Obviously, you're flipping home court here, but it takes a lot for me to look at that matchup and how it played out in that game and get this below double digits. I don't know if we'll see another 24 plus, considering we're trying to ride the alts. I'm hoping it goes in that direction, but it really does feel like this should be at least in like the low teens. Atlanta has been extremely impressive. I would say they've been the team I've been like most pleased to see this year in terms of how well they're doing, just as a fan of Carl Smesko from his days coaching at FGCU, and just like as a fan of Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray. And like, this team has had so much talent for the last couple of years, and it just felt like they couldn't quite get over the hump from a coaching perspective. And it finally feels like they found their guy. And Connecticut, it doesn't feel the same way quite. This is I talked about them as a quasi expansion franchise there in the intro, and it's true. It's kind of Marina Mabry, Tina Charles, and Parts, like kind of similar to the boat that Phoenix is in, but with a much worse core 2 stars to build around. So yeah, these teams are just in completely different places for me right now. Connecticut is such a basement dweller, and Atlanta seems to be like a true fringe contender right now. And also, they're getting Jordan Canada back this game, and I think obviously we don't know how much she'll play yet. I'm kind of predicting that they'll slow roll her a bit, just considering how good this team has looked without her. There's no need to rush her back in, but I do think that having your point guard back, there's this, this team is very close. They like each other a lot. They've been missing playing with their friend Jordan, and there's an emotional lift to that I think will carry, regardless of if she just comes in intermittently, plays like 18 minutes. I think that her presence on the court just has that impact.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. A lot of that is in my cap as well, and it's funny. The word that you use that I have been using time and time again with this team, impressed. Impressed is the word. They just seem to be playing at a really high level. They're the 3rd best net rating right now, and you talked about this earlier in the week with Dano, but the math problem, they're just so good at the math problem. They take so many threes. They don't allow you to take threes. Connecticut is the opposite. They make the 2nd fewest threes, and they're the 2nd worst in the league at the math problem. They take very few threes. They give up a ton. That's going to be really hard math. That's how you lose by 24 points. So, Connecticut in general, their net rating right now is minus 23.7. They're not going to have a net rating of minus 23.7 for the season. I think it's pretty clear that they are the worst team in the W right now. So they played 7 games. More than half of those games have been losses of 22 plus points. That's really, really bad. And it shows a team that is, when things spiral, it really can get out of control. So I'm with you on the Atlanta -9. The alt that I found that was the most extreme, I kind of wanted to target the minus 19.5 just for a nice clean number of, that is around where they've been losing by often. But I found a minus 25.5 was the best I could find at plus 1100. So let's ride with that. That's a pretty extreme alt. Maybe we can take, a step or two along the way to a minus 18.5. But I think that this game absolutely has the ability to get out of hand. My only worry, I love your look at Jordan Canada being back and her friends loving her being back and it, being good vibes. I have to shout out Andrew O'Connor-Watts, who's always on this, of when a really good player returns that first game back, sometimes the market can overcorrect. But here's the thing, though. The market didn't really correct. It was Atlanta -9. It went to 9.5 for a second and got back to 9, which I'm shocked by. I think Jordan Canada is clearly a net positive. So I'm definitely fine laying this 9.
I think
it's
going
offset.
With the alts
in general.
I think it's offset a bit by her being in general a player whose impact is underrated by the market, by the media often. I mean, she's, incredible both ways. Amazing defender, amazing point. Like, Yeah, I really do think it's the kind of thing where it should have probably moved a full point and maybe then been bet back to 9.5. But yeah, it doesn't seem like, unless they were factoring in her playing and the -9 kind of had that cooked
Yeah.
in the first place, that's a concern. But yeah, I'm good fading the Ewing effect in this spot. I'm all right with it.
Same. All right, you want to talk about your player prop, Alicia Gray over 6.5 points, and I'll talk through Ryan after that.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, this Leisha's been an absolute star this season. She's been incredible. My player prop model for this game, which obviously doesn't know Jordan Canada is playing in this game, puts her closer to like an 18.5 or 19.5 here. And yeah, I do think that even with Jordan is in, as I said, we don't know how much she plays. This could ultimately not impact Alicia that much just because Jordan's not on the floor as much as the props would, as much as the people making the lines for the props might expect. But also, the data from last year shows that when they are on the floor together, Alicia Gray actually scores a little bit more.
Nice.
And kind of benefits from having that other ball handler out there to set her up, allow her to work off ball a little bit more, which is, going back to earlier in her career and going back to college, kind of more where she's comfortable, more where she cut her teeth. So yeah, just looking at those on-offs, it really caught my eye that they had possibly moved Alicia Gray the wrong way, in my opinion. So I'm good with taking a unit, kind of fading the props maker in the other direction.
Yeah, honestly, the logic is pretty similar here for me as well. So for Ryan, looking at last year's stats, her 3-point rate goes up from 54%, which is already an absurd 3-point rate, to 59%.
Incredible.
With Canada on the court. It makes sense. Canada's able to create a lot of looks for her teammates. And Ryan has not been shy about taking them. She's averaging 10.4 attempts per game. We saw her really struggle to hit some at the start of the season, but that variance is kind of swinging back around. She's hit 4 each of her last 2 games. We're getting this at pretty healthy plus money. I think I saw around plus 142 out there. Her last 2 games, 4 for 11, 4 for 12. If she's up in that 12-13 range, and again, this is a Connecticut team that you can get threes up against. It really doesn't take all that much luck to get that 4-3 to clear it. That's kind of about what her shooting percentage is. 4 of 12 isn't like you're shooting any kind of crazy percentage. That's, if anything, probably a little bit below her career rate. So, and here's the other thing to think about. The Sun have the second worst 3-point percentage defense in the league. They allow opposing teams to shoot over 40%, basically 40% from 3. So really love Ryan here. If you've been listening, we do this Survivor, or we do Survivor with Dani, we do Game Script with Dani. But before I get to that, I want to do a little reminder about the WNBA projections that we have going on in the Action Network app. If you're looking for an edge betting, a bedge as I call it, WNBA sides, totals, or props, Action Pro projections are the perfect tool for your toolbox this season. If you aren't an Action Pro subscriber yet, you can get $20 off an annual subscription right now. Just visit actionnetwork.com/pro to sign up. $20 off the annual subscription price at actionnetwork.com/pro. So with that said, we kind of have a great game script sitting right in front of us, Dani. So why don't you kind of talk it through to me while I open up a book and see what we can get on that, what we can kind of build in the moment.
Okay, so basically to summarize what we've just been saying, just to go through it real quickly. Atlanta's good. Connecticut is bad. Atlanta's going to be even better with Jordan Canada back. Knock on wood that I'm not jinxing us into, bad territory with that. We know that Alicia Gray scores more with Jordan Canada on the floor. We know that Ryan shoots more threes with Jordan Canada on the floor. I'm going to throw another leg in here. We know that Ryan gets more assists per possession with Jordan Canada. What?
Fewer assists, right?
Fewer assists. Yeah, I said less, I thought.
Oh, I heard whatever I heard, but we're back in, and I'm building as we go here. By the way, this line has now moved to 8.5. I do not understand this. Maybe this is fading, like thinking that it's going to take a second for her to adjust to an offense. I think this is silly. I'm with you on, if the market's moving this way, I'm not going to be scared off it. No. What we have here is Atlanta minus 8.5, Ryan to make 3 threes, Alicia to score 15 points, Ryan Howard to go under 4.5 assists at plus 485.
And what book was that at?
That's at FanDuel. So you get plus 485 at FanDuel with those four legs. Honestly, you could even juice it a little bit. Try and get greedy with Ryan 4 threes. Try and get greedy with Alicia Gray 20 plus points. But I really like that at plus 485 for those four legs.
Yeah. No, that feels super realistic. Doesn't feel like a crazy like chasing wild plus money parlay. Feels like something that how the game should go.
I love it. And I too tend to get greedy. You saw me even doing it in that moment, like trying to think out loud and get greedy.
Yeah.
Just take that was a really nice one, Jim. Just leave it at plus 485 and shop those around, because I was just doing that in the moment here. So definitely make sure you shop that around. And that should be a good look. All right, let's transition into the second half of this podcast, which will be similar to what the second half of the Dano podcast was, which is talking through one betting trend per team. Dani, I brought you for the Western Conference. We gave you 7 teams. Dano only got 6. You got 7.
Boom.
Unfortunately, you have to start with the Dallas Wings. That's the flip side of that.
Team Dani, though, just wanted to say.
Yes. So let's start with Dallas. I'll defer to you as you've got some great notes here. I'm really excited to get into some of these. But Dallas, why don't you lead and give your betting takeaway for Dallas so far, and then I'll do the same, and we'll kind of work our way through the West.
Yeah, well. First of all, I just want to say about the Dallas Wings, I've been following this team for years and years, and following Wings team specifically built around Enrique for years and years, and it's just we're in a completely different head coaching and general manager regime now. Like, it feels like all of the like bad energy of the past should have been gone. Stuff still feels kind of sus in terms of the energy. People. These players don't seem super bought in on Chris Gilclanis so far, and like you hope he could turn it around, because it's only a few weeks into the season. But I don't know, stuff already feels off. Enrique has obviously been going through a really massive slump. It's beyond what we've seen from her when she slumped in previous years, just in terms of how long this has lasted. So I don't know. Maybe they got to move this team. I don't know what the deal with it is. Maybe they got to move them to actual Dallas and not Arlington Park or wherever they are now.
Yeah, maybe that will mix up the karma, because I was watching that press conference the other day that I'm guessing is maybe part of what you're referencing.
Oh my God,
the vibes there already look way off. So
that press conference, which gave us 2 new emojis for Dejanay Carrington in the Bet You Wins Discord.
I love that. Yeah, the emojis in there in general are fire, so I'm not surprised we got 2 out of that.
Actually, that's a good segue, because I actually wanted to talk about Dejanay a bit. It's a small sample. It's only been 2 games, but I've been very interested in the way that Dejanay's usage on offense is changing, and how she's kind of been trusted with the ball more without Paige in the lineup the last couple of games. And we know now that she won't be playing tomorrow either, which is great, because I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to talk about this. But yeah, with Maddie Siegrist in the lineup, they're using Carrington a lot more like a guard than a wing. She's been putting up really great numbers. In her last game, she had 22 points and 4 assists against the Storm. Before that, against the Sky, 16 points and 6 assists, which is actually her career high the game before. So yeah, Gilclanis is clearly trusting her a lot more with the ball in her hand than what we've seen from her at the beginning of this season and previously in Connecticut. She's kind of cooking. It's been fun to watch. Definitely something I'm going to be looking at when I take a look through props for this game a little bit more closely. To talk about Dallas a little bit more broadly, stepping back though, defense. Never this team's strong suit. Definitely better than last year, it seems, and definitely better than they looked like in the preseason and first game or two of this season. But yeah, as our friend Calvin Wetzel likes to call them, they're still Alice. No D.
No D.
They're second in pace, so they're still good for like a nice like, oh, this player is playing Dallas. Let's take them in the bad D pace up spot. They're especially bad, it seems, at disrupting passing lanes. So, yeah, I'm focusing on like opponent assists there. They lead the league in opponent assists per possession. So, yeah, people are just getting what they want against Dallas. Some things never change.
Yeah, I love that breakdown. There's so much there. I want to circle back real quick to Dijonay at the start. I think this is really, really a good find of them trusting Dijonay as more of a guard than a wing, and kind of how that looks, career, like you said, a career high in assists. I wonder if this is something that kind of can translate even when Paige is back and looks more like Dijonay leading the second unit. Now, Ty Harris will also be back eventually.
Yep.
Maybe that's a role they envision for her. But I think that kind of bench unit lead guard for Dijonay could be very interesting and something that I would love to see kind of unlocked in her game. So that's a really good find, and maybe one that is one of those where people think, oh, Paige is back, that's gone. Well, no, she showed that skill. She's now going to do that with the second unit. So I think that's a possibility as well. It's a really good find.
Especially with a new coach who's always trying to learn more about these players and learn more about what he can do.
Yeah, 100%. And then, basically just copying you on the overall stats. They allow the most free throw attempts per game, most assists per game. That pace is up there as well, like you noted. So really good for overs, for props against them as well. So honestly, there's so much more fun teams to talk about. Let's go to one of the teams that I think is maybe the most fun, maybe the most fun team in the league. I mean, the Liberty are the best team in the league, clearly.
Yeah.
But the Golden State Valkyries, with the way their crowd is right now and the lineups they run out and the offense they play and the defense they play, to be honest, they're a fun team. So I'll lead here really quick just to say that they've played the hardest strength of schedule so far, and they have a couple wins. I was willing to give out under, even in single digits for them this year. I would bump that up. I think this team's really pesky. They're 4-2 against the spread. Now they're playing right now. I'm not sure if they just covered that last game, but they do it with defense. Their unders were 1-5 to the under. Again, that's before this game against Phoenix, but this was almost certainly tracking for another under as well. So this is becoming a trend if it's 6 out of 7 here. Did they end up covering, Danny?
There's 17 seconds left and they're down 4. So
they probably will. Well,
what do we close at? Like 6.5, 5? Yeah. So it's in the balance.
The market's starting to adjust on them, which I think
people are finding this Valkyries good against the spread angle, and by people I don't mean me.
Yeah, transition to your thoughts on the Valkyries, because that's my takeaway is that they're really fun and they're pesky and that they love to go to the under.
Yeah, no, great defensive squad. My biggest takeaway is you can't blindly fade the Valkyries just because they're an expansion team, which is not the point of view that you or I or any of us that, are kind of in, as I was saying, this expanded network came into the season with. I'm impressed. They're better than they have any right to be. They're better than the history of expansion teams in this league suggested they should be. Natalie Nakase is clearly an extremely talented head coach. And also a lot of credit to their vets, I would say. They have I'm thinking about like Kayla Thornton, they have a lot of hard-nosed vets who aren't just going to lie down and let you run up the score on them and take a beating. So yeah, they've been really competent defensively. I've also the skeleton of a really great offense is there. It has no flesh, but it is a skeleton. I think the system actually looks great and, is a winning basketball system that's creating great looks from 3, great looks by the rim. It's just they don't have the right personnel to make all of those shots. The right looks are happening. They're just not being converted into points. But I think, give them a couple of free agency periods. Let Natalie cook. This might be a good team sooner than you would think.
On the preseason pod, I said my hot take for them was, they'll win a title in a decade, and Danielle was like, that is not hot enough, and I pushed up to 7 years. I'm feeling good about that right now. I feel like that the bones are there infrastructurally. That crowd is amazing. Said it before. I'm going to say again. Clearly, Natalie Nakase is a very good coach. I think she'll be there for a while, and this team seems like they will have patience with her, and they're going to have. This is the bench unit of a championship team. It just doesn't have the stars yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they will be able to go out in free agency. I mean, we're going to see a ton of free agents at the end of the season. Maybe a bad draft or a good draft pick with a bad record. They could be in the hunt as soon as next season. They really could be. So absolutely love what I've seen from them. Really cool to see an expansion team really kind of being prioritized in the city, being prioritized among the fan base there. That's really cool. So absolutely love what we're seeing from the Valkyries. Let's go to the Sparks, it's been a little bit bumpier. They were a team that looked like a kind of trendy pick to start the season of like, man, could this be, like a sleeper contender? Kelsey Plum, Dearica Hamby, Rakia Jackson breakout. It's stalled out a little bit right now, but I maybe I'll defer to you because I think we're in alignment here. I don't think it's going to continue to be as bad as it has been. So what has caught your eye with the Sparks in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talent on this team, and you hope that they could smooth things out with Rakia. If there is a problem, it's still not clear to me if there.
Yeah.
There were a lot of rumors bouncing around Twitter a couple of nights ago about
And she's returning on Friday.
Yeah, she is playing. There was like rumors being bounced around that she was gonna ask for a trade, and some people were saying that she was pregnant, which is completely not true.
And she took a very funny photo making fun of that.
Yes, she took a photo with a basketball baby belly bump, saying it's a girl. But yeah, I mean, it seems like all of that might have been a little bit overblown, perhaps, which is good if she's coming back in the right headspace. I still really believe in what we saw from her at Unrivaled, and I really think that she can hit a stride and contribute like massively on this team. And we haven't even mentioned Azrae Stevens, who has looked really, really incredible at times for the Sparks to start the season. She was really like their big like surprise breakout in the first couple of games where they looked really good, and she's regressed a bit. But yeah, I mean, the starting five is extremely talented. Definitely a more of an offensive squad. The defense isn't looking as great, which isn't shocking. You look at this personnel on paper, and it's a team that's looking to score. They're fourth to last in defensive rating. Particularly, they're really bad at taking away the three, which has really hurt them. They're allowing the second most 3-point attempts per game, which is something that I'm definitely going to keep looking at with their opponents, because I don't think Rakia coming back moves the needle on that much. She's a good perimeter defender, but she's not, she's inexperienced, and she's not going to completely salve everything else. In terms of her return, probably good to look at assist overs for Kelsey Plum. I'm thinking they've been playing, or at least last game, they were playing three guards with Julia Lamond, Odyssey Sims, and Kelsey Plum all in the starting five. Kelsey kind of playing the three weirdly. She should get the ball in her hand a little bit more for Kia coming back to the starting five, I would think.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the breakdown there because it is a lot of what I'm saying. Like the talent is there on the team, and the defense is the thing. And we had Sean Kerner on, I think it was last week, maybe even 2 weeks ago. And he pointed out this kind of impending explosion of Sparks defense. It was kind of a ticking time bomb of who they had played and a little bit of shooting regression. They have looked a lot worse, and the overs have been coming in. Cam Brink is really going to be the pivot piece. If she's able to come back in a couple of weeks, and I never watch enough of the college game. You and Dani, or you and Calvin watch so much more than I do. I didn't really conceptualize how much of an impact Cam Brink really could have. She's an elite defender. That is going to be a huge difference to that defense. And I think the Sparks are going to be interesting. If she comes back, I'm going to probably be looking to buy in on their win total, maybe even to make the playoffs. That 8th spot is really open right now. So if we ever get like a plus number on it somehow, because they start cold, but then we get Cam Brink news, I'm definitely going to be looking at that.
Well, to jump off of that, and to kind of I guess pimp something that Calvin gave out in the Bet You Win server. If they do make the playoffs, they're probably not going to get the 7th seed. There's a pretty big gap between 7 and 8. It's worth looking at those specific, like, to be the 8th seed markets that they have on FanDuel for the Sparks.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, especially looking at that in a few weeks when Cam's coming back. Maybe they continue to struggle on defense. Maybe they're kind of middling. Maybe it's looking like the Valkyries might have like a first season miracle and take that 8th spot instead, and then Cam comes back in and the Sparks separate. That's the way I'd be looking to play that, because I would be really shocked to see any other team like fall below that line between 7 and 8.
Yeah, there's a distinct 7, and then there's like a little bit of a group of teams that I think the Sparks are kind of clearly the best of, but you got to
Agreed.
actually see it at some point. The only other betting takeaway I had here, and I at the end of this note, I wrote probably nothing but interesting. Here's their quarter splits for pace and net rating. In the first quarter, they play at a pace of 102.3, easily the fastest pace they play all game, and they're at a minus 1.7 net rating, so about break even. Second quarter, that drops down to 95 pace. So maybe it's a bench unit. Maybe it's Plum that's doing a lot of the pushing of that pace. It's down to a negative 6.3 net rating. Third quarter is rough. It's 99 pace. So it's kind of in the middle of those two, minus 23 net rating. Then the fourth quarter, which I think is the most interesting, the slowest pace by far, 89.4 pace and a plus 22.9 net rating. We're early enough in the season where this could entirely be noise. But I want to keep an eye on it. It's kind of interesting. Them being a really good fourth quarter team, at least right now, being a really bad third quarter team, and being a really slow fourth quarter team. And is there something too when they're playing slow, they play a little better? Now, their second best quarter is the first quarter when they play the fastest pace. So, again, there's a lot of noise in this right now, but it's just something to keep an eye on. These quarter splits, I like to dig into them. Sometimes there's good stuff there. Sometimes it's noise. So any thoughts on that, or should we slide over to Las Vegas?
I agree that it's interesting. Yeah, especially the thing that catches my eye most is the negative 23 in third quarter plus 22.9 in the fourth quarter, because that's just so funny that if you looked at it just by halves, you would be like, okay, they're like just okay in the second half. They're like pretty middling. And then you actually dig into it. It's like, no, they suck in the third quarter. And they're one of the best teams in the league in the fourth quarter.
It is really strange.
I'm curious to see if that holds up. I'm curious to look at like where their rotations are at in the third and fourth. Is there someone coming in at the beginning of the fourth quarter that is just lifting them, for example? But
rotation weird stuff is a really good spot to be looking for when you're looking at quarter stuff, because there's really good resources out there to find to show you kind of substitution patterns, and you can see game over game, who is coming in at what points and what impact that's having on, either pace or scoring or defense or offense, any of that stuff. So let's move to Vegas, who kind of been like, they really haven't, their record isn't that bad, but the vibes aren't even that bad. But I think there's questions. And I think part of it is it's just this weirdness about the defense really seems to have slipped. And I highlighted here the 2-point defense in particular is getting shredded. And they're allowing the most rebounds. This is a team with A'ja Wilson, like the best interior defender and best rebounder outside of Angel Reese in the league. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So I wrote some notes. Maybe I can circle back to it, but you kind of looked at a similar thing. So what do you make of this, Danny? How does it make sense?
Yeah, no, I was looking at your notes, and then I started deep diving into the Aces defense, because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. As you said, they have A'ja Wilson in the paint. She should be locking it down. Kia Stokes is next to her, who, for all the bad you can say about Kia's game, she's an excellent post defender.
Yeah.
You can't take that away from her. It makes little sense to me. I kind of wish that we had data on like positional scoring by zone. I wish I could know like whether it is that like, it's hard to imagine. And having watched the Aces, it doesn't seem like A'ja is getting like beat in the post by other bigs or anything like that. It kind of feels like it must be guards and wings beating their defenders on the perimeters, getting in the drive, and then like scoring at the basket in that way. That they like. That's the only. I can only get to that. I can't get to they're like straight up losing the battle of the posts. That would make no sense.
Yeah. No, it really is strange. I even looked at some players who take a lot of shots in that zone. So, Alyssa Thomas, Brittany Griner, Shakira Austin, Elizabeth Williams, Ozzie Sims, Aaliyah Boston. I tried to get like a couple guards.
It's very broad.
Bigs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just mixed results. Now, if I expanded the sample big enough, there'd be a pattern that emerged, but it's really just kind of strange. And for now, I'll probably look in general, like, I think I probably will look at players who score in that zone. Maybe it's a Courtney Williams. She's more 10 to 16 feet.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a weird zone, that 3 to 10 feet. If you're looking on Basketball Reference, that's the one where they really have struggled. And it's not just this year. It's the past 2 seasons before this. It's really strange that it's this pattern. I think part of it is probably Becky's defense is trying to bring people into that range, but it seems like it's not, it's going all that well. So maybe it's like it's too open of a look. I don't know. It's weird in general. We don't have to linger on it too long because I'm not sure if I have an actionable bet off of it. But so is there anything else aces wise that you have? I think you have a pretty actionable takeaway for your next one.
Yeah, no, I knew that our friend Owen Pence would be on us if we didn't say anything positive about the aces. So
Very true.
one positive trend that has been like eye-popping to me is Asia Wilson's playmaking. That's been crazy. She's averaging 4.2 assists per game right now. I believe it was like 2.4 to 2.6 last season. Her previous career high was like in the low threes, and that was like years and years ago. And you kind of figured coming into the season that someone would have to step up to take some of the playmaking touches that you lose from trading Kelsey Plum for Jewel Lloyd, because Jewel is not a passer at all, really, not really a playmaker over her career. This season she hasn't been much of anything. But I definitely figured that it'd be like a Chelsea Gray or a Jackie Young who would see that like 2 assists per game bump, not Asia. And we'll see if that continues for the rest of the season, or if she kind of is just like doing it all right now, because she was for a second leading her team in all 3 major categories. Yeah,
I think all 5, because I think she was leading it maybe in steals and blocks too.
Yeah, definitely she was. Yeah,
that's amazing. I mean,
someone who isn't in the MVP combo.
Well, and
really?
that's what I was about to say. It is kind of crazy that I think that speaks to how a lot of people feel about these aces, that there are some doubts that even though the record is like, not that bad, there's really not a lot of Asia MVP stuff right now. And, I think for my money, she is still clearly the best player in the league.
Yes.
But MVP doesn't always go to the best player. Sometimes it is, a really, really, really good player, maybe the second best player on the league on a phenomenal team, which maybe transitions us perfectly to the next team, the Minnesota Lynx here.
Minnesota.
Yes. Arguably the, best or second best team in the league. And what are you looking at? I love this trend you found. I know Dano had a half split by point totals. You have a half split by spread or net rating type thing here when you look at Minnesota, right?
Yeah, no, that I noticed that they had been. What I wrote here was that they have kind of a South Carolina quality about them, because if y'all listening have been betting with us in the NCAA season, you'll know that we almost never bet South Carolina pregame and are always looking for like a second quarter or halftime spot to live bet them. The Lynx are only plus 1.9 in first halves. This is just in like plus minus in margin. But they're a leading plus 8.3 in the second half. So it definitely feels like they are like starting slow, kind of, not playing fully to the level that they can coming out of the locker room at the beginning of the game. But, they got Cheryl Reeve. She seems to be setting them right at halftime. So yeah, it definitely seems like it's worth a live spread at halftime, or maybe just like a pregame second half spread bet if you are already looking to bet on the Lynx.
I love that.
I probably wouldn't like go as far as fading them in the first half, even though they haven't been great in first half, just because again, it's early in the season. We're dealing with like 6 or 7 games of data. I can't really make sense of why this team is starting slow, because they're a team that just went to the finals, running back their entire roster basically. But at the same time, for now, I feel better. I said quarantining my action on the Lynx just to the second half.
Well, I think the best way you said is live bet, because if you bet it pregame, maybe they are just invigorated in the first half. But if you see them kind of like playing like they're in molasses a little bit, and it's like, and maybe there's some shooting regression on both sides, I definitely think it's a really good live look. The other thing, I mean, this is a really basic take when it comes to Minnesota, but I mean, betting player prop unders against them, really good. I mean, you have a path to Minnesota blowing them out. We just saw that in the last game against Phoenix. But also, I mean, they play at the slowest pace in the league. They allow the fewest rebounds, the third fewest assists, the second fewest points. They allow their opponents to get up threes, but once again, they're not making them. This is a defense that kind of is like an OKC type of like, I'll let you shoot the three, but I'm not going to let you make the three. They've
Yeah,
also settled
they're
in.
taking away the good threes and they're leaving the bad
Exactly.
threes. Yeah.
And good at baiting you into maybe a not so good three that
Yeah.
in the end is a win for their defense. They've settled into a pretty tight rotation here with a starting five that gets pretty good run. It's almost like 30 minutes across the board for their starters. And then like three bench players all on 10 to 15 minutes. So they're like pretty solvable if you do a minutes based projection. That's kind of fun to see. And it's a very good starting five. And I think that kind of continuity actually is pretty good building towards the postseason when that rotation might look exactly the same. Maybe those three bench players go down to 10 minutes. The starters go up, a little bit more. But, I feel like before the season, I was incredibly high on Minnesota. They were my pick to win it all. The first couple of games, I got a little bit spooked, to be honest. And I didn't love that. Not that I didn't love that. I was worried about K-Mac and being out for something personal, and we didn't know anything. K-Mac's back. K-Mac looks great. I would say that the Liberty have looked good enough that I if I had to make a title pick this second, it would be the Liberty, even at the odds that they have right now. But I think this very much is live to be Minnesota, New York again. I think Minnesota looks every bit as good as they did last year. I think New York just looks a little bit better, but I'm pretty content with what I've seen from Minnesota, even though they're not covering as many spreads. I'm not super worried. Are you in the same boat when it comes to kind of futures talk about Minnesota?
Yeah, absolutely. They're winning the games, which at the end of the day is what matters to them.
Yeah,
They're not tracking their success against the spread.
yeah.
And
Let's hope. We don't want a little Jonte action.
But that being said, and this is kind of just classic Cheryl Reeve forever. Like you listen to her in a presser after a game that they won by like 15 or 16 points, and all she's saying is what they did wrong, and all she's saying is this can't be the team that we are in the postseason, and she's dead on for that because she's the most tenured coach in this league. She's seen it. She knows what is going to, bite you on the ass in the postseason. I trust her with my life. So I feel good about where the Lynx are at. They're learning how to win close games also, which is something that you can't really say about the Liberty right now, and that's something that might hurt them later. Obviously, it's because they're so good that they don't have to play in close games, but when it comes down to it, that's a mental toughness thing.
100%. Yeah, I'm with that. All right, let's move along to Phoenix. I'll lead with you again. I'll just toss it to you. Phoenix in general, it looks like they got another win. Looks like they held on to win tonight.
Yep.
Playing really well without a couple of players. I don't have as many notes here, in part because so much is going to look different when AT and Ka come back. But have you looked? Anything caught your eye in particular, or do we do relatively brief and talk long about crazy old Seattle there to end things?
I know what you want to do. But I do have a couple of things to say about Phoenix. Yeah, I mean, like, again, as you just said, like, everything is going to change when this team is healthy. And so, like, from a capping perspective, a lot of the data that we're getting right now is useless to us in like a month, which is so fun. But again, it will be like a fun, good challenge to figure out who this team is now when they do have Ka back, when they do have AT back. But, considering that injury luck, they've looked surprisingly good. I think they improved to 6-3 now after the win tonight. A ton of relatively unknown players are on this roster. They have played their role as role players around a heliocentric offense really well. They are they're playing unselfishly. They're making the sacrifices they need to make. They're hitting the shots they need to hit. And it's worked so far. They've gotten wins against some pretty decent teams. I really think that if things continue gelling like this when they get healthy, the Mercury can be a really tough outcome playoff time. And if you didn't get a bite on them to win the championship before these free agency signings, you might get a good chance to get decent value on them, either to win the championship or like just to make the semis or something when they are finally getting healthy. Unless of course they get healthy and then the magic's gone and it's the curse of the three-headed star. But best of hope that like ensemble attitude of the supporting cast can kind of bleed onto the stars and make it all work out.
Well, and
The
it also is a great like testing ground for the players that you want to end up next to those stars. Like
yeah,
Monique Akoa Makani, I've said her name probably a dozen times in the podcast already because she's been one of my favorite players to watch all
she's been
season.
so impressive.
That game is really going to translate well next to stars. Like, doesn't take a whole lot off the table. Really, really additive player. Catherine Westbeld, who I always get nervous. I'm saying the wrong Westbeld, but I believe it is Catherine
It
Westbeld
is
in
Catherine
Phoenix.
Westbeld.
There's just some really good pieces next to, and they don't even have Natasha Mack back. It's not only their stars; they even have some bench players that are out as well. So, did you have any final thoughts on Phoenix before we slide over to Seattle?
I mean, I've been really impressed with their defense in particular.
Yeah,
And like I was talking about with the Valkyries, when you are, these players that are kind of starting to get more opportunities because of expansion and looking for something to kind of hang your hat on in this league, that is the controllable side of the floor. More relatively, that's the effort-based side of the floor, and it just really hardens me to see these lesser-known players like come out and earn a role through grit and defense. I really like that.
yeah.
It's very cool. Phoenix is third in defensive rating, which I did not know until I was doing research for this podcast. It's definitely better than I would have expected. They are not great on the backboards, which kind of makes sense considering when you look at some of the names they have out, like Alyssa Thomas, Natasha Mack. They are allowing the third most rebounds per game. So, yeah, probably going to start looking a little bit more at opponent rebounding overs against Phoenix.
I love that. I love that as a final look against Phoenix. And yeah, again, who knows when that, like if AT comes back, maybe that drops a little bit. If Natasha Mack comes back, that drops a little bit. But
yeah,
these are angles that are relevant for the upcoming games for sure. So let's move to the final team in the West, my sweet baby Seattle Storm. Man, what is going on in Seattle right now? They're not. So they're 4-4. It's not the end of the world. They've had a tough schedule, to be honest, and to be 4-4, it's not the end of the world. But there's a lot of weird stuff. They're not getting to the free throw line at all. They're not rebounding. Ezzy Magbagor has stalled out a little bit in a way that I think is small sample, but I'm like a tiny bit nervous. They got weird rotations going. They got weird minutes allotments. They got, because of that, a player asking out with maybe the cutest, sweetest, nicest trade request that any human has ever put through. Did you see that?
Did you see the quote where she said, "I don't want to be a weird or bad person"? I've always loved Leah Rue. She's a great personality. She's adorable. That took the cake. I mean, like,
they're getting investigated 1 second. They're not. It is strange in Seattle. So I'll throw it to you though, because you actually have a very positive takeaway from this team. I think it's easy to get caught up with all of this weirdness going around Seattle, but you're very right to highlight this player who's really been kind of a breakout star of the early season and is, long-time favorite of, I think, all of ours, Gabby Williams, who's been just awesome to start the season.
Yeah, no, she's been so amazing these last few games, especially. She's averaging 18 points per game over the last 4 games. She's cleared her points prop, which I think has been like between 11.5 and 13.5 in all 4 of those games. She's not a good career 3-point shooter. She was an outright bad 3-point shooter going back to like college and her first couple years in the league. She's averaging 2 threes per game on 43.6% shooting this season so far. Those are incredible numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that while continuing to show what she's always been known for, like the two-way excellence, the terrific playmaking from a wing, and all of that while being the coolest woman I've ever seen in my entire life. But yeah, I think that Calvin and I got burned on a couple of Gabby Williams threes unders the past couple of weeks, and I think betting wise, it's beyond just me like from as a basketball fan gushing about Gabby. As a bettor, it's time to embrace that a lot of her previous like career numbers are fairly irrelevant when looking at her game, looking at her for player props this year. And that makes a lot of sense. The last year for her has been like incredibly transformative. She was the star of the French team in an Olympics in Paris.
Yeah.
And then, had a really great season overseas for Fenner. Yeah, I mean, until books catch up, it's Gabby Williams over season.
I love that. Another player who's potentially coming along, her countrymate there. Don't
Yeah.
look now, but Dominique Malanga has had a couple of really nice games in a row, shooting
Ooh la
really well
la.
from the field for rookie. If she starts getting minutes, I'm really curious to see if she starts to kind of slide in more. And I hope that, so Ezzy is down from 11.7 points per game last season, which is actually even a little bit down from the season before that.
Yeah.
But was more efficient. It's down to 7.1 this season. The shooting splits are crazy. She was at 51, 28, 87 last year. She's at 41, 0, 31. Something's going on. This
the free
is
throw
clearly not
shooting is obviously the biggest red flag there.
100%. And I think it has to be a mental thing at this point. And I think Ezzy is a young player with a really good team around her that I think I think looking at, we talked with Gabby of not trying to catch the falling knife, shout out Raheem Palmer and his regression analogy that I always love there. I'm fine doing some Ezzy overs, especially if I start to see some signs of life. If she starts to hit some free throws, if she starts to hit a 3 or 2 and the confidence starts snowballing, I still think this is a great player here. So I'm still very confused about some stuff. I don't know why Lexi Brown has played 31 minutes all season. I think I projected her for like 28 minutes opening night because I was like, oh, this makes sense to be the starting 2 guard for Seattle. She's just not even getting any minutes.
She's not in the rotation. Yeah, I mean, I have to, with Lexi, it's always a question of whether it's her health or what.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it is, all the best wishes to her.
100%.
With Ezzy, it does. You said it, that it does really look like a mental thing, and I do have to wonder. And this is all just speculation. I do just have to wonder if, you've been the young center in Seattle for all these years.
No, 100%.
And now you're like, what is she, 26 now?
Around there, yeah.
Yeah, like, reaching what should be her prime, and they've just drafted this player at her position who everyone is saying might be like the best player in the league in 10 years.
Yeah. It would be hard.
It would mess with me, is all I'm saying. I don't know, Ezzy. I can't speak for her feelings, but it would mess with me.
No, I'm with you 100%. But I also think that those things can settle in, and I think that if you've got good coaches and teammates around you, hopefully Seattle has that. Those are question marks at times, but Seattle keeps it interesting, man. They're one of my favorites, if only because there's always some silliness going on. So, Dani, that was a blast going through the West with you. We snuck up on an hour, but it seemed like it went by very quick. So we'll wrap things up there. If you'd like to tail any of the bets we talked at the beginning of the podcast, the always excellent David Payne we'll have those in quick slip links in the episode description. Make sure you check out Dani's work, DBL Fluidity, on all socials, in the Action app every now and then, and mostly at the Bet She Wins Discord. I mean, the community Dani created over there is really, really a great environment just to sweat bets and hang out. There's free plays and all that. So I don't want to go over the top with it for any for conflict of interest or anything. But
of course,
the job Dani did over there is genuinely awesome. So
couldn't have done it without you.
Well, quite literally.
Yeah, no, genuinely. Yeah.
Well, that is a good note to end on. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. If you are listening to podcasts, obviously rate and review. Download the Action Network app. Thanks to David Payne on audio. Thank you to Gifford Gould and the YouTube team for the visuals. And for now, let's get buckets.